Can you see it? Did you notice?
Check, but the puck comes right to Pettersson, who tries a bank pass for Besser. In with a shot, he scores!
A moment's notice, at arm's length.
To the line, Hughes scores! First career NHL goal, Quinn Hughes makes it 1-0.
Quinn Hughes beat reporter here. I don't cover the Canucks. Yeah. I cover Quinn Hughes and what he's doing to the Canucks.
Just wave the guy and get Demko involved. I wanted them in Valentine's Day.
Wow. We should do a radio show together. Right on. I want to fist bump you right now.
Thurl steals, cutting in, shoots, scores! They slayed the dragon!
Don't waste all the good stuff on the off air. Let's go.
Hello Canucks fans, welcome back to another episode of Canucks Conversation presented by the great folks at Parallel 49 Brewing. My name is David Quadrelli and thank you for joining us this week for episode 62. Joining me now is my co-host, that's pretty weird to say, the man who built this house, Chris Faber. Chris, how you doing, buddy?
Doing great, man. It's weird to be introed on my I guess not my own show anymore, but the show that I started, like you mentioned. It's you did a good job in the intro, man. I don't know if you had as much pop as I do with the Hello Canucks fans, but that was good.
I might have to do another take next week, but for now, that'll do. And yeah, like I said, man, this is the house you built. This is awesome, and it's an honor to be your co-host and actually like driving the conversation in this episode. So let's just jump right into it. We're recording this on Friday evening. It'll be out Saturday morning. The Canucks just had a game against the first place Arizona Coyotes.
Well, you got to talk about that because you went as a fan for the first time since your Botsford night, right?
I went as a fan. I did. I wore a jersey, and it was a wonderful experience, I have to say. And you know what? I even cheered a little. I was never much of a cheerer. I'm not someone who likes to high five other people. If you go for a high five, I'll be that guy that doesn't give you one back.
I am that guy. Like I think the last game we were at, there was a couple older ladies in front of us, and we ended up buying them some wine, sending some wine down to those ladies, and then like second intermission comes around and we get Mike's Hard coming our way. It was a great combination. But I know you're not a drinker, but when you go, like when I go as a fan, which is every single time, I don't go as a media member, but when I go as a fan, go there to have quite a few drinks and have a good time. But I know you don't drink. Or do you go there and just crush pop the whole time? Or
guess what my beverage of choice is? Just take a guess.
Do they have Italian soda there or no?
Oh no. You'll know once you'll know. Think
Pepsi.
about it. No, it's water. I just get a bottled water and I go right there. I'm the hydrated guy.
What does that cost you in the arena?
Like $4. It's like unbelievable. But you know what? Yeah, I got to get me a Canuck water, man.
Well, that was a big
night.
game, too, and you were in attendance. I know that it's a little bit different watching a game in person than it is on TV. What were some of the things you saw in the game?
Well,
Look at me. I'm already taking over the hosting spot. Sorry.
Well, we got to talk about Brandon Sutter. That's the first thing that I was going to intro us into is Brandon Sutter, man. It's his return to the lineup, and he played great. He was awesome on that fourth line. And you know what? It's crazy to say. The fourth line actually spent some time in the offensive zone last night, and it feels like this whole month of December and early into January, we haven't seen that. We haven't seen the fourth line play in the offensive zone at all. They can't generate offense. They're always in the defensive zone, and they get to the red line, and yeah, boys, we got that puck in deep. We just gave them possession, but it's okay. Like, we did our job.
Yeah.
But this game, it was great. And, you know, I was with the person I was with. I said to her right away, I said, yeah, this is the Canucks shutdown line. They don't do much. They don't score. So don't get your hopes up. And then there was the goal that was overturned. Jay Beagle scored it after Tyler Mott brought it in. It was offside, but, you know, it was pretty cool because that right after I said that happened. So, yeah, I had people on Twitter being like, okay, now say we never win a draft lottery. Okay, now say we never win the cup, even though that one, again, is pretty painful to say out loud. But it was a great game, and Brandon Sutter, he had a great game as well.
Yeah, I like what that fourth line does with Brandon Sutter in that spot. And, Brandon Sutter's had a pretty good start to the season. I mean, if you saw what he's doing aside from getting injured, like when he's actually playing hockey, he's been actually pretty effective, whether, he's playing on the wing with Jay Beagle or for a while there, he's playing center. Thank God he's not now. It's nice, and thank God, kind of pun intended there, because Gaudette's taken over that third line spot. But when Brandon Sutter's playing on that line, he is like I like Brandon Sutter when he's in that role. I like Brandon Sutter when he's using that role. Maybe I don't like having Jay Beagle and Brandon Sutter so much in this lineup together because they're taking up a lot of money and they're playing a role that, is something that you don't really want to have a lot of money invested in, is that fourth line. But when they're playing together, and Tyler Mott, I've actually really liked Tyler Mott's game over the last little bit. I think he's skating very well. He's firing the shot. He was the only one on that fourth line that was taking shots throughout this whole month, like you mentioned. And Jay Beagle's winning so many damn faceoffs. It kind of sets up for a good situation with Sutter, because when he's coming back into the lineup and he's just missed so many games with injury and it seems like he can't stay healthy any of these years here, if he's playing in a fourth line role with Jay Beagle, I think that's a spot where he likes to play in. I think that's a spot that he's used to playing in. And, we're not asking him to be a second line center or even a third line center anymore. And I think that they can thrive in that fourth line and, actually have some depth there. Now that you're taking Tim Schaller out of the lineup and he's going to be the extra forward, like maybe you can rotate some stuff around and see what works best.
Yeah, I definitely like Sutter in that role, and we're gonna talk about a guy in the minors a little bit later. And I've been telling you all day how much I want to talk about this guy, and we were just watching the Utica Comets game, and he had 2 goals tonight. That's Justin Bailey, and we'll be talking about him later on for sure, later in the program. Let's talk about Brock Besser.
Yeah, lots to talk about with Brock Besser. He's moved down to the third line. It's an interesting one because we've seen Jake been thrown onto the. In practice, he gets thrown up to the first line every once in a while. Last time he didn't get a chance to play, but he hops in, and a lot of people are saying, like, what's wrong with Brock Besser? What's he not doing this year? And the crazy thing is he's almost a point per game. Like, he's got 43 points in the 48 games. And I know we wanted to touch on him last week a little bit, and then it seemed like he kind of just went off over this past week, which was awesome to see. And I love the fact that they can move him up and down the lineup a little bit. Maybe he doesn't have to play with Petey and JT Miller. It was like what we were talking about off air a little bit was I think the pair right now is Petey and Miller. And maybe Besser doesn't really have a pair anymore. I don't see why they don't just put him on that line with Bo Horvat, though. Like, Bo Horvat, Pearson, and Besser is a second line that I wouldn't mind seeing. If you're going to throw Jake into your top 6, it's like you're adding a top 6 guy out of nowhere. So maybe one of your other top 6 guys goes and plays on the other line in the top 6. You don't have Louis Eriksson out there, but I mean, Louis Eriksson's been effective, I guess you could say. But then again, Louis Eriksson playing in our top 6 isn't really ideal for this Canucks team.
I think the Canucks also need to look long-term, and we're going to talk about Louis Eriksson later. I've got a big article on him dropping, believe it or not, but yeah.
Is anybody excited for that?
I know Daniel Wagner is.
There you
go. No, but I think the Canucks need to be looking long-term still, right? This, they're still coming out of a rebuild. Their core is young. Louis Eriksson just isn't the long-term plan for Bo Horvat. It's no secret. Louis Eriksson knows that. But, a Brock Besser potentially could be. So you want to go with what's working, and right now Louis Eriksson is working. You got to give him credit. Like, he has played well, and I know I'm gonna be turning into a Louis Eriksson apologist when this article drops. Like, I know I'm gonna get some heat for it, but I he's played well, and you can't really dispute that. Is he's played well, but then you also look, and going back to Brandon Sutter, I think it was Jeff Patterson that just brought this up on the radio. Was there's the option of putting Brandon Sutter on the second line alongside Bo Horvat. He gives you all the defensive capabilities that Louis Eriksson has, right? Skates better, shoots better. I think Brandon Sutter might even be a better option than Eriksson, but then again, I think Brock Besser, who's up to 43 points, 16 of which are goals in 48 games this season, I think he's a better option than both of those guys.
Yeah, and I guess you got to really think about what the second line is playing like and what the third line is playing like, because the second line, it's got Bo Horvat. He's going to match up against the other team's best line every single night. So maybe using Brock Besser on that line isn't the smartest idea. Maybe that's why Louis Eriksson is succeeding in that role, because that seems like that was what Louis was kind of brought in to be. He was a guy who had a good two-way game, who could score some garbage goals. And the fact that he's playing on that second line, that's probably why it's working, because he's matching up against other teams' best lines, and he's playing a game where he has to be a defensive player.
Yeah, exactly. He's been in that role, but on the Beagle line, and they don't have a two-way game. The Beagle line is, I was just talking about it. They're all defensive, mostly. Like that's all they do is play the defensive game. We got that puck in deep. Good job, boys. But Bo Horvat, on the other hand, Bo Horvat can score some goals, and Tanner Pearson as well. Tanner Pearson is a top 6 winger on this team. So to put Louis Eriksson in that position, yeah, maybe that's why we're seeing him succeed.
I was succeeding with my Louis Eriksson stick that I bought last weekend at the equipment sale. I had, obviously the crazy snow that we had over this past week in Vancouver, which, it's kind of funny for the rest of the nation. And to look at us and see like hashtag BC Storm or hashtag Vancouver Snow trending all over Canada, because most people were just kind of making fun of us over here in Vancouver. But I used the Louis Eriksson stick to get some snow off the top of my truck. So that might be the most action that stick has had since I bought it last week for sure, but maybe even when he had it on the ice as well. So I'm putting it to use. I got that Louis Eriksson stick, and funny story. When we go out and buy these, you and me were looking, and there was Broken Sticks $25 rack. And we're looking at them, and I'm just like, hey, there's a lot of broken sticks, and there was one that was sticking out like literally, and it was just like, wow, that stick's not broken at all. And then I look on the name thing on it, and it's like L. Erickson. And I was just like, how perfect is it that this stick is in the broken stick section and it looks completely fine? And like after looking at it for a while, there's like a tiny little crack on the bottom heel of the stick. And I was just like, wow, like I can't turn this down. Like this is just a perfect opportunity. I was hoping it was going to make its way to Reddit, because I know how those Reddit folk just love Louis Eriksson. But yeah, that was definitely cool. I know that we found some sweet stuff at the equipment sale as well. You picked up a couple things. I got this shirt that I'm wearing right now, draft shirt. It was pretty fun over there. But man, going down in that locker room, that place stunk, eh? Like it was cool, but man, that locker room stunk.
Well, you look at it was in the visiting dressing room. For those that don't know, we went to the equipment sale at Rogers Arena, is what we're talking about right now. And the whole sale was in the visiting dressing room. And holy shit, I don't know if you've been in the Canucks home room.
No, I haven't. No.
It is like a state-of-the-art facility, like fucking you could live in there, okay? And this visiting dressing room, like I've seen nicer visiting dressing rooms in like Bill Copeland in Burnaby. Like there's nicer dressing rooms all over the place. And like this was, it stunk, man. It was brutal. But yeah, that sale, that was awesome. We got some good stuff. We're going to be giving a lot of it away to our Patreon supporters. That was the main reason we went, was to find some stuff for the Patreon. Yeah. And we actually found something. Can we tell them what the item is?
Yeah, I think so. We might as well tell people about what the Patreon deal is. For the people that are going to donate $10, become our Hero Tier members, which is going to get you guys giveaways every single month. This month, we're going to do a big giveaway for everyone who joins as a Hero Tier member in January. For everyone that joins in January as well, we're going to send out t-shirts. We're going to send out like a kind of variety pack. We have a couple things picked out. We found some hockey cards. We found some other gifts, and the puck is what we're going to be giving away with the first one. You can talk about that.
The one person is going to get a Alex Burrows Ring of Honor night puck. It has the inscription on it, and it looks really cool. We picked that up, and we're going to be slipping it into one random person's package and then sending it off to them. So everybody's going to get something.
Kind of sounds dirty.
Oh, yeah. It's going to be a nice little treat for everybody. We're going to get shirts in there, cards. We bought a whole bunch of stuff. And then from every month going forward, we're going to do a giveaway of one item for one subscriber in the Hero Tier each month. And yeah, we bought a lot of good shit, man. I'm really excited.
We really did. And we'll touch on some other Patreon stuff later, because we got some awesome interviews next week. But you got to talk about the puck that you bought, because how cool is that, buying that game puck?
Yeah, so Faber made me get it, but it was the Botchford night that I went to, the November 16th game against the Avalanche. It was the warm-up puck. They were selling them for like $5, and I was like, okay, well, that was my night, so I got to go. And, I still have my press pass from that night just sitting on my bookshelf. Yeah. I took it off the night I got home and just left it there, and it's still there. So maybe I'll like hang it up with the puck or something, do something nice with the Botchford night and everything, how great that night was. Really, it was an awesome, awesome night.
You're set up to make like an awesome piece of memorabilia for yourself. Plus, like, you throw the picture that you got with Kat in there, like Kat Botchford, like you throw that picture together, like you got a perfect little thing. So that's awesome, man.
The one with Alfred and Jeff as well, and Drance.
Going in there, you're like, I don't know, and I'm like, Quads, we're not leaving this table until you buy this puck, dude.
Yeah, well, I'm cheap. I just bought Domino's. We got to talk about that too. I bought Domino's, and Chris is roasting me on Twitter.
Yeah, the for people who don't know, like the first day I came over to Vancouver, you and me went to Pasta Amore, and I was stoked. Like, you're an Italian guy. I wanted to go to the good Italian restaurant, and I told you, like, I've never been to an Italian restaurant from the island. Like, the most Italian restaurant we have is Boston Pizza on Nanaimo. So like actually going to an actual Italian restaurant was sweet. And then when you text me and you're like, hey, do you want to get some pizza? Well, I'll pick up some pizza and come in. I was like, hell yeah. I was expecting you to pick up like a capicoglio or some sort of real good tasting pizza with some like crazy meats on it. And then I was like, I was actually like, when you texted me that, I looked at the Pasta Amore menu and I was looking at the pizzas and I was like, they got a ham and pineapple one. Give me a ham and pineapple. And then when you said Domino's is cheap, I was just like, what the hell? I think you lost your Italian card. Like, Next week you're gonna be putting sour cream on pizza, man.
I'll never ever do that. But yeah, no, it was cheap, man. I was in between this place called Pizza Factory in Coquitlam. I was between that and Domino's, but Domino's had that 2 for $7.99. We each got a pizza each for $7.99. You can't beat that, man.
No,
you can't beat that value, and I'm looking for value out there. That's the kind of players I look for in the NHL. That's the kind of pizza I'm looking for, man. So that's why I went with Domino's today.
We had Pizza Hut the other day because it was buy one pizza, get your next 3 for $5 each or something. So yeah, like we're feeding the family. We just got one big stuffed crust pizza, and then you get the rest for $5. So I'm surprised you didn't pull that move off. But then again, like I know I ate a lot of that pizza, but I don't think we would have put away 4 pizzas in here.
Yeah, I don't think we would have been able to. No.
Janitor might get in on it. We could get everyone involved. Late night here at BCIT.
Yeah, we'll just let that bring us into an ad. So now here's an ad from the great folks at Parallel 49 Brewing.
And we got to give a quick shout out to our presenting sponsor, Parallel 49 Brewing Company. Make sure to check out their East Van location. You can find it at 1950 Triumph Street. I'm going to be down there this week meeting with some of the folks there. We might be setting up an idea for a meetup if you guys are interested, but the beers that I want to shout out this week are the Jerkface 9000. The last time I had that, I was at BC Place watching a women's soccer game, and it's an absolute delicious beer, and it's pretty awesome that they are now involved with BC Place, and I hope that they get to Canucks game soon. If they are, if you guys see any Parallel beers at Canucks game, let me know because I haven't been in a few games. So make sure you go and try the Jerkface 9000. That is a Northwest wheat ale. And the other one I want to shout out is the Trash Panda. I think they call it Trashy Tuesdays. Go out and have yourself a Trash Panda on a Tuesday. It is a hazy IPA. That's a hazy Indian Pale Ale, and it's absolutely delicious. A couple of the more simple beers, I guess, but these are ones that are available year-round for you guys, so go out and try the Jerkface and the Trash Panda, all from Parallel 49 Brewing Company. You can find them on Twitter at Parallel49Beer.
I don't drink, but if I did, it certainly would be Parallel 49 Brewing beer. Chris, let's jump right back into our next topic, and that is Jake Virtanen, who is, as you wrote on our sheet here, so hot right now. Talk about Jake.
Right now. Yeah, I've liked Jake Virtanen's game a lot this year. Obviously, I was there at training camp when he was, out of shape and being put on that third group, but I think that what he's been able to do lately has been so impressive, and I think he got to that point because of the 5-on-5 success that he was having early on in the season. I mean, there was times where this team really struggled to score at 5-on-5, but it seems like Jake Virtanen's one of the guys who's been able to, succeed at 5-on-5, and now he's giving an opportunity on the power play. His last 16 games, he's got 7 goals. So, I mean, the guy's riding a hot hand right now. And in those games, like, he's under 14 minutes a game of ice time. So when he gets an opportunity to play with these guys like JT Miller and Elias Pettersson, like, I'm excited to see what he can do, because if he plays the Jake Virtanen game that we all want to see, which is put your head down, drive to the net, lay some hits, be good on a forecheck, if he can play that type of game, he's going to get a lot of opportunities playing with JT Miller and Elias Pettersson.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Are you sold on Jake Virtanen, though? Because I'm actually not yet. I think we talked about this last week, and we were talking about it, like, I think this is a hot streak, and I think we're going to be having this conversation again next year, potentially. I don't think this is sustainable for Jake Virtanen, and I don't think that long term he's going to be able to produce like he is right now.
I think that Jake Virtanen has put himself in a spot right now where if he's making $2.5 million, like I mentioned last week on the show, if he's making $2.5 million and he's playing on your third line, he's a kind of guy that you want on your third line, because he does go on these streaks like he's on right now. And it seems like if this is going to be more of the norm than the irregular thing that happens with Jake Virtanen, like, I'm excited to see him play in that role. Maybe, I'm not sold on him being the guy that should be on that Pettersson and Miller line long term for sure. But I think that's something that you want to bring up here is, maybe he's on that line to be showcased a little bit more, right?
Yeah, I think now is like a great time to sell high on him. I'm still under the impression that the organization isn't going to do that. I think it's more of a an attitude of, okay, we let this guy develop. We went through all these bad years with him. Now he's finally developed. Now we're not going to let go of him, which is, it's totally fair. It's a totally fair feeling to have about a player that you've invested so much into. I just think, if teams are calling on Jake Virtanen, the Canucks were looking to trade him last year. Like, that was well known, the whole Tyson Barrie fiasco and everything that was happening with the Jake Virtanen trade rumors and all that. So it's not like this team won't trade Jake Virtanen. I just hope if they do, now's the time they do it, because his value is definitely higher now. And again, he's being showcased on a line with Elias Pettersson. That's a great first line for the Canucks so far. And teams are seeing that for sure, and they're seeing what Jake Virtanen is doing on that line.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe it's something that a lot of people talked about was, power forwards take a long time to develop. And I think he's at the point right now in his career where he's sitting at 23 years old. This is when the power forward needs to turn the corner. And if he's turning the corner right now, I wouldn't want to trade him. Because if this is him turning the corner, imagine what he's like when he gets around that corner. If he's at 25, 26 years old and he gets it, like how long have we been waiting for Jake Virtanen just to get it? And it seems like he's turning that corner, right? Like he's scoring amount of goals. He's going to be a 20-goal scorer this year, definitely. Like he's putting up the numbers. If he gets, people are probably going to start talking about 25 goals pretty damn soon here because not only do, people in Vancouver love Jake Virtanen because he's a local kid, but he gets in these hot streaks. And I know he's probably going to slow down here in the next little bit. But I think that the stuff that we're seeing him do on the third line is actually pretty sustainable. I mean, he's playing with a guy like Adam Gaudette, and though they don't really control a lot of the shot share, the puck's in their zone a lot of the times. When the puck's in the offensive zone, they're putting up pretty good numbers. I mean, their PDO, which measures basically luck. Like if you're a high PDO, you're not getting lucky. If you're a low PDO, you're not getting lucky enough. I just messed that up completely wrong. But yeah, if you're they're sitting on the ice, the on-ice shooting percentage is 8%, which is relatively low. I would say it's not high, but it's not low. It's about average. So this is what we're going to get out of this line when he's playing with Adam Gaudette and Antoine Roussel. And if Jake Virtanen is the type of player that I don't mind throwing up into the top 6 every once in a while, because that's something that Travis Green talked about in training camp. Like he doesn't need to have 60 great games from Jake Virtanen. He doesn't need 60 excellent games. He doesn't even need 50. He just needs 60 good games from Jake Virtanen. And this might be the first year that we see 60 good games out of Jake Virtanen. And if that's what we're going to see for the norm moving forward, if he's at least 60 good games every year, that's a guy that I don't want to trade away.
No, I totally agree with you on that. Like, if this is sustainable and he can keep it up, it could turn into a whole other, they all talk about it, the Cam Neely, the Todd Bertuzzi situation, whatever. Like, Todd Bertuzzi was traded away to the Canucks, so that worked in their favor. But the Cam Neely situation, you trade away a young power forward and then he finds success somewhere else. But, a lot of people will tell you Jake Virtanen is just not a power forward, and that's not his game.
Yeah.
So you know what? I'm skeptical, but yeah, for now, let's go shotgun Jake, man. I'm all for it.
Well, I mean, and you mentioned selling high, and I think that there are certain times when you want to sell high. If this team was not competing for a playoff spot, right now, or if they weren't sitting in a playoff spot right now, it might be a good idea to sell high. Like last year, if Jake was doing this last year, it might be a good idea to sell high. But right now, where this team's at in the rebuild means so much about the trades that you're going to make, which is strange because the trades that they made put them into the spot of where they're at in the rebuild and kind of ended it with what they did with JT Miller and signing Myers. Like they went out and they've set their own course to where they are at in the rebuild, which is over. The rebuild's over. They're not looking to add any more draft picks, not like they did add any draft picks over the years. But I mean, they're not looking to add draft picks. I think that some of these young guys that we have on this team are going to be the ones that we want to see play here when they're 25, 26, 27, and that's when you're going to want to see them compete for a cup. I mean, like Jake Virtanen's not young like he was anymore. He's 23 years old, which is so funny to say that he's not one of the young guys anymore, but having a 23-year-old as kind of like the next level of your core, Jake Virtanen is not the core anymore. Maybe a lot of people thought he was going to be, and a lot of people thought he might pan out to be a top 6 guy, but with the players that have come in and the players that are coming in, Jake Virtanen is not really a core foundational player anymore. He's no Brandon Sutter, right? And he's the type of guy that definitely can help your team, and he's the type of guy that you want to see in the playoffs. You mentioned it earlier. What happens if Jake does have excellent games in the playoffs? And he might just want to rep for Vancouver. Wait till you feel the emotion of this city for a home playoff game, and Jake lived down the street and he gets it. He's going to get Vancouver behind him on the power, on a playoff game, right? And I'm just so excited to see that happen that I don't think the value that you would get back is worth it for Jake Virtanen right now, unless someone comes at you with a first.
Yeah,
and
and that's the thing is the Canucks, from what I've heard, is that the Canucks' price is really high on Jake Virtanen, as it should be. They shouldn't sell this kid for nothing. I'm totally for that. They got to play hardball if they're even thinking about selling him, because if you're going to trade him, you don't want to take back scraps because it's not worth it. You're not going to. You don't need to trade Jake Virtanen right now. If it's a great deal, then sure. That's why I say sell high, right? Because it has to be a high value return. That's the whole point of sell high. But yeah, in the playoffs, I think Jake Virtanen could really surprise a lot of people.
Big time.
And I think, like you just said with that beautiful speech you just gave.
I like talking about
city.
Jake a lot.
Yeah, you do. The city getting behind him, and he puts the city on his back. It's just, you gave me goosebumps, man.
The other thing I wanted to bring up too, when he is playing with Pettersson, it's not like he's played a ton of minutes with Pettersson. He's played about 80 minutes of 5-on-5. and their on-ice shooting percentage when those two are on the ice together, sitting under 5%, which is just bad. Like, they are going to score a lot more if they do keep playing together. I think that's going to balance out a little bit. Like you mentioned, maybe it gets up to 8%. That's 2-3 more goals every couple minutes, like in that 70 minutes. And that's when I think we're going to start to see even more people maybe talk about a trade, because if Jake starts playing with Pettersson and JT Miller, like we mentioned earlier in this conversation, that's the pair. It's JT Miller and Pettersson. Jake's just going to be the piece that mixes in there every once in a while, and I like that he can do that. Like, he doesn't have to be the guy. The line's probably better with Brock Besser on it. Right? Like, it's not really a hot take to say that. The line's better with Brock Besser there. But if Brock Besser can find a little bit of success with Gaudette and Roussel, like, hell, why not have Jake up there? It's another free guy to have up on that line. Or like we talked about earlier, maybe Brock goes and plays with Bo because they've played together, and that would be a pair I would like to see as well.
There's so many options, and that's the thing, is it's no longer a top 6, bottom 6. Thank God. It's now a top 9, right? And it's a top 9 forward group, and the Canucks want 3 lines, at least 3 lines that can score, and that's what you get when you put Brock Besser on that third line alongside Adam Gaudette and Antoine Roussel. You have a third line that can score and can produce offense.
Yeah.
And that's what the Canucks wanted. So yeah, they kind of balance it out with that, and yeah, I've liked Jake Furtado on that first line. I got to be honest.
Yeah, and even if that third line is inconsistent, I mean, they're still the third line. Even though they're technically like the second scoring line, because like we talked about earlier, the Bo Horvat line, that's going to be the line that matches up. So they kind of are expected to score goals. Like, they're not expected to not allow goals, right? Like, they just want to go out there and score goals if it's Gaudette, Virtanen, and Roussel. But man, you put Brock on that line, and Brock's a lot better shooter than Jake is. Even though Jake's been putting some, he's had some good games this year, definitely, and he's had some good shots. But if that third line with Brock Besser on it can be, Brock Besser's a streaky guy. He goes on these runs where he scores a bunch of goals in a few games, and then he'll be quiet on the goals for a little bit. This year, he's been good at getting points. He's just been adding assists on the power play and playing on that lotto line. But that's the thing. If your third line's inconsistent, it's not really a bad thing, because a lot of third lines in the NHL are inconsistent.
Moving on here, we got to talk about this fourth line, Chris. We have to talk about this fourth line. Brandon Sutter, we've already talked about, made his return to the lineup last night's game, and he performed very well. Tim Schaller sat in the press box, and that's one player I kind of want to talk about, and I don't want to come pick on Tim Schaller, but the shine has really wore off on Tim Schaller. Like, at the start of the year when he scored those 4 goals, people were starting, the Stone Cold Tim Schaller movement was starting to take over Rogers Arena. They made the graphic for him and everything. That was pretty awesome. But no, I think the shine's kind of wore off on Tim Schaller. He's not producing anything now in the offensive zone, and he's just okay in the defensive zone. I don't think he's done anything remarkable, and he's not a fast player or anything, and Mott brings so much speed to that line, and now Brandon Sutter's back. But one player that I wanted to talk about, and I told people we would talk about it later, is Justin Bailey in the minors. He's with the Utica Comets right now, and man, that guy, he just scored another hat trick tonight.
It's hilarious.
Unbelievable. I'm saying if Brandon Sutter goes down or Tyler Mott goes down, somebody on that fourth line goes down, and the Canucks need a fourth line replacement, you got to call up Justin Bailey, and you got to give him a good long look.
Yeah, lots to take in there on that fourth line. Tim Schaller is starting to become Tim Schaller again, right? Like, Tim Schaller last year was a guy who barely got into this lineup. And what you just mentioned with Bailey, yeah. So people who don't know, Justin Bailey has 3 hat tricks in his last 4 games. Which is absolutely insane. And later on with Corey, I already know Corey's excited because he's texting me in all caps and all exclamation points, like he's ready to roll. So we'll get to that soon. But I think that, when you go and you score 9 goals in 4 games, you probably jump a lot of people in the depth chart. Like, Justin Bailey has likely jumped Zach McEwen. Zach McEwen was the guy who gets called up to be the fourth line replacement, or
for sure,
or even a guy that got to play with Bo Horvat. Like, you're right. Like, if Louis starts sucking again, like, why not give Justin Bailey around that line? You're literally using Louis Eriksson on your second line. You can use anybody at this point. If you're going to throw Louis up in your top 6, like, there's almost anyone you could try from this Utica team that would probably do just as fine. I mean, I've said, obviously Louis is a good two-way player, and Justin Bailey has some things to work on in his two-way game. Like, he's fast as hell. He might need to be a little bit more physical, and he's 6'4". Like, he's a big guy. That's the only thing that I've wanted to see from him from watching the Comets is a little bit more physicality, but you do bring up a good point. Like, he flies like the wind. And I think something that you're talking about a lot lately is that if Tyler Mott, who's a pretty good skater in his own, if he's playing with Justin Bailey on his other wing, like, that's a fast line. That's going to be a good forechecking line.
That's an aggressive forechecking line. And, Mott's generated chances. And even last night, Brandon Sutter was hustling out there, man. Like, he was hustling, and he was hard on the forecheck, and it was good to see.
Yeah.
But yeah, you put Justin Bailey on that line with Tyler Mott, and then you have Jay Beagle in the middle. You know, he's obviously slower than the two guys we just mentioned, but
Just
that's
a bit.
fast fourth line. And you know what I want to mention about you? You know, you just brought up him playing with Horvat. And the reason that I personally believe that he's a better option for the NHL than Reed Boucher is I think Reed Boucher's skating. Reed Boucher is not as fast as Justin Bailey.
Yeah,
And
not
the
even close. Yeah.
NHL is a league where speed dominates, right? And to have a player that you compared to the Connor McDavid speed of the AHL,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
That
he
is-
moves around. He moves around AHL skaters similar to how Connor McDavid does against NHL skaters, which isn't. It's not saying that Justin Bailey is Connor McDavid's speed, but he moves around them like Connor McDavid does. Like when he doesn't need a step on a guy, he needs to be like the guy needs to have one step on him, and he's probably by him
It's
if it's one
the
step.
first 3 steps.
Yeah.
It's huge for Bailey. And,
Yeah.
I was just watching the game with you, and you see it right away, like how he gets around guys and, like, just the way he skates out there. I think that, yeah, he is worth a look on the second line if the Canucks do need a call-up. I'd say he's better than a Zach McEwen. He's a better option than Zach McEwen right now. Better than a Reed Boucher. And, as much as it pains me to say it, he's better than a Nikolai Goldobin right now, Chris.
Yeah, I mean he is in certain situations. Well, you got to ride the hot hand, and I'll be surprised if we can get Corey to say that he's a call up over Zach McEwen. If we'll see what Corey has to say, but Corey's got a great nickname for him as well, the Gentleman. He's calling him the Gentleman. For people who don't get that, Justin Bailey, normally his celebration with a lot of guys on the bench or even after the game, you see him take his glove off and he shakes hands. That's like his sort of that's his thing. So I love that nickname by Corey. Corey's obviously the king of nicknames with that Utica Comets team. But yeah, I mean there's a lot to be excited about Justin Bailey just from what he's been doing lately, because he's a guy that I didn't know a ton about at the start of the year. I knew that he was going to be a Comet. And then when I first got my AHL TV package, I just saw him flying down the wing. And people who have listened to this show and listened to the Ride in the Bus segment with Corey Hergott know that we've praised Justin Bailey a lot for his games, but it seems like he's not really the most consistent as well. Like he's got 3 hat tricks in 4 games. That's incredible. But what did he have before that? I think he had 12 goals going into that. I mean, that's not a ton of goals, and I mean he's had a really good run. But like I said, he had 12 goals in his first 34 games or so. So, that's okay in the AHL. But now that he's up to 21 and 40, I think he's on pace for like 46 goals or something ridiculous now.
Yeah, exactly. And I just look at it like if he can hold his own in the defensive end, which obviously he needs to work on it. I was talking to Corey about that off air. He does need to work on his defensive game. He is being used on the Utica penalty kill, however. So, they use a Tim Schaller on the penalty kill. And, you give Justin Bailey, a younger player, some reps on the penalty kill, see how he does. And even if he doesn't produce offense for the fourth line, he's still a fast skater, and he's still a solid skater. And that's going to be very good for the fourth line in their forechecking efforts, which is what I like to see.
And I mean, the fourth line conversation, we can even expand it to other things because, like, look at how much money is being spent on that fourth line, and how much worse is your fourth line if it's Tyler Mott at center, Justin Bailey on the wing, and Zach McEwen on the other wing. Like, how much worse is that than Tyler Mott, Jay Beagle, and Brandon Sutter? Like, you're going to lose a little bit of penalty killing, obviously, with Jay Beagle. He's an excellent penalty killer. Like, give him that. He's a great penalty killer, but how much worse is it? And think about how much money it is less. It's a lot less money. I mean, it's about $6 million off the cap if you go down to those other 3 guys in that spot. And that's kind of what I want a fourth line to be. Your fourth line doesn't need to be relied on that much. Like, they're not playing a ton of minutes. Worry about your top 9 group being effective and fill your bottom fourth line with guys that can maybe be effective for you that you can rotate. And this is what it's like when your organization actually has depth. You can try a bunch of different guys. If we didn't have Jay Beagle and Brandon Sutter right now, we would see Justin Bailey. We would see Zach McEwen. And I think a lot of people want to see these guys because they just have potential. Like, why not have guys that have potential on your fourth line? It just makes so much more sense to me than going out and signing fourth line guys to 3 and 4 year deals with decent money thrown into them. That just doesn't add up to me, I guess.
No, that's totally fair. Dude, if Botch were here, he'd be saying, yeah, I want to fist bump you right now, like he does in our intro. You're totally right. But with that, let's just let that take us into our Ride in the Bus segment with Corey Hergott.
a play by Zach McEwen, who draws the Comets to within one. A little shimmy shake. Lynn with a shot, and he scores! Cole Lynn with his second in as many games, and the Comets tie it up 1.
My town. Oh, mama, when you come on down, won't you come on down? I said, my home.
Holy moly! It's Ole! You are looking for his first career goal of power play
When you
strike.
give your love, and when you give your love, you drive me crazy.
All right, guys, joining us now for the Ride in the Bus segment is Corey Hergott. Corey, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. Quads, we just came off of a pretty big win for the Utica Comets tonight, so I'm a happy Comets Corey today.
Yes, for sure. And one player Chris and I were just talking about was Justin Bailey, and he had a hat trick tonight. Why don't you kind of talk about his game tonight?
Well, that's his third hat trick in his last 4 games. He's just on fire right now. I made a little bit of a joke about it, but I nicknamed him the Gentleman due to his handshake celebration that he does after his goals, and he's got 3 hat tricks since then. So I'm going to take a little bit of credit for this at least anyway. But on a more serious note, no, he's up to 34 points now in 40 games. He's 15th overall in the league. 1 point behind his little brother, as he's calling him now, Cole Lind. So that's an interesting dynamic. Those two have really formed some fantastic chemistry. And with 22 goals now, Bailey is 1 shy of his career high. And he's tied for 2nd overall in the AHL with Reed Boucher for goals scored. So, that's a guy that's, he's done some pretty big things this year for the Comets. And I spoke with him at training camp, and he mentioned, at 24 years old, this is the time for him to really start making a push, for legitimate NHL minutes. And, he's obviously pretty eager to do that.
Yeah, and Corey, we've been talking about Justin Bailey a lot this year. The way that like we mentioned, we were just talking about him going into this segment, and the thing that I mentioned was he skates around AHL players similar to the way that Connor McDavid does against NHL players. Am I crazy saying that?
No, not at all. He's if he's not the fastest skater in the American Hockey League, he's definitely one of them. He blows by guys like they're standing still on the regular, and it's a big part of his game. And Trent Cull talks about it all the time. It helps him drive play for his line, and when you've got a guy that can do that and put defensemen back on their heels the way he can, that's a pretty good tool to have in a toolbox that's 6'4" and 212-ish pounds. He brings a lot to the table.
And Corey, I know you and I were talking about it earlier today off air. I was talking to you about maybe the potential of putting Justin Bailey on the Canucks 4th line if a Brandon Sutter were to go down or if a Tyler Mott were to go down. I just personally think he's a better option than, per se, a Tim Schaller. And I know you said he needs to work on his defensive game, but what else do you think he would bring to a 4th line for the Canucks?
I actually don't think his defensive game is all that bad. That's just not his biggest strength. The Comets do use him on the penalty kill, and again with his speed, that makes him a dangerous player, shorthanded. So, not every defensive play is a shorthanded play, but he's a guy that can get back on the forecheck as quick as anybody, and that's something that I think the 4th line in Vancouver could use. A guy that can get in hard on the forecheck, get back fast on the back check, and help his teammates out in all 3 zones. I think it's a feather in his cap. It's a guy that I think he's got a lot that he can bring to the table for the Canucks if they wanted to look at him in that sort of a role. And, as we spoke about earlier today, the idea of if you had Justin Bailey and Tyler Mott on the same line, the speed that they'd be able to bring together would be something pretty special to watch, I think.
And now, Corey, you and I talked about this earlier today. Chris and I talked about this. Sorry, was Zach? Yeah, lots of talk today. But Zach McEwen is the guy that we've kind of seen as the call up for the Canucks if they need a call up. would you say that it's safe to say that with these 9 goals that Justin Bailey has just scored, do you think it's safe to say that Justin Bailey has passed Zach McEwen on the Canucks depth chart?
I don't know. That's a tough question. I have a bit of a soft spot for McEwen, so that's a bit of a tough one for me to answer. I think right now, you've got a guy in Justin Bailey that's he's on fire. He's playing with a lot of confidence, and maybe he's a guy that you call up and get him into the lineup. Zach McEwen hasn't had a lot of games. I think he's a guy that needs to get some game time in. So if the team were to swap those two around and actually play Justin Bailey at the NHL level, I wouldn't have an issue with that. I think Zach needs to get playing. I want to see him back on the ice. Getting his practices at the NHL level is great for him, and that's one thing that's going to help him on the, maybe not on the ice, but his practice habits and that sort of a thing. I think he'll pick up good things while he's up. But to answer your question, I don't know that Bailey has necessarily passed McEwen on the depth chart, but I think he's a guy that maybe the team might think about putting into the lineup sooner than later if they have an injury in that bottom 6.
Yeah, so he's picking up some good paychecks up here too, Corey. I know he's getting practice and tips, but the paychecks of the NHL a little bit better. I got a follow up question here because I think you saw it. I sent out the tweet today asking if anybody had any questions for you. There was a couple good ones that there was a lot that we seem to talk about every week, but there's a couple ones that I wanted to dive in with you. The first one is from Grady Sass, who's from TSN. His question is, how do you see Jasek's trajectory playing out? Potential call-up next season, or is he still too far down the depth chart?
Well, I think the thing that we have to think about, and that's the hard thing for me to try to process all the time when people ask me, is this guy, worthy of a call-up and that sort of a thing. We have to think about who's actually on the big club roster. If we're just talking about does a player deserve a look, or could he come up and play a handful of games if the team needed him for an injury fill-in, then I think Lukas Jasek is probably putting himself in the conversation for that probably by mid-season next year.
Wow.
If we're talking about Lukas Jasek, should he be called up and playing ahead of a Jake Virtanen or a Tyler Mott or a Jay Beagle or anybody that's currently really on the roster right now, I'm not sure that I'm prepared to say he's a better option than any of those guys at the moment.
Yeah, and I guess kind of going off of that, we talked about Bailey, talked about Jasek, and the line that they're playing with together with Cole Lind. I mean, where's that chemistry coming from with Bailey and Lind? Because like you mentioned, he's calling him his little brother. Like, they looked like they're playing very well together, those two.
Well, that's one of my questions that I put into the media scrum tonight in Utica. We'll see if I get an answer back from that. I did ask to put the question to both Bailey and Lind, depending on which guy came out for the scrum, about their chemistry. So we'll see where the answer comes from that. But they've played quite a bit together, and they seem to click well on the ice. Their games complement each other. You've got a guy like Bailey who, he can get pucks in deep with his speed, and Cole's a really turning into quite a nifty playmaker as well. And those two, they just feed well off of each other. And I think it's really good for Cole's development this year that he's found some chemistry with a guy like Bailey. And I think going forward, those two, if this team gets into the playoffs, you've got guys like that have been playing this well together for such a long stretch this year. If they're healthy, they're going to be dangerous. And I think Cole, Lind, and I think Cole specifically has a chance to really make some noise this year in the playoffs for the Comets if they get there.
So, Corey, we have a question here. We just found out today that Brogan Rafferty is going to be down for a bit with an injury. So the question is, since Brogan is out for a while, who do you think will pick up his scoring from the back end?
Well, Ole Juolevi picked up a goal and an assist tonight, so early returns would be him. I think, Brogan's season really took off offensively once he got the opportunity on the first unit power play when Juolevi missed those games with a sore hip. And now Juolevi tonight was back into that first unit power play for the first power play, but Guillaume Brisebois slid into that spot on the next one. So we'll see where that goes going forward. I do think Juolevi's got the opportunity to put up more points this year. His game's a lot more well-rounded now at this point in the season than it was earlier in the year. I'm really liking a lot of what's going on with Levy's game lately. He did get burned again tonight by a speedy forward on the penalty or on the power play. That seems to be a thing for him, and that might be what took him off the first unit. But he is a guy that those are the things that I think will clean up in his game once he's able to really skate properly. I think there's still issues with him from that hip and the knee issues and the back issues. Those are all areas that you want to have strong in your body if you're a good skater, and those are areas that he's obviously had some issues with in recent years.
Yeah, Corey, I was on with the Nucks misconduct guys last week, and they asked about Olli Levy, and the thing that I was talking about was, his mind's never going to be the problem, but I wonder if him adjusting to his new body is going to end up being the problem, because you talk about a back surgery, you talk about a knee surgery. Those aren't, they say they're minor surgeries, but if you're getting surgeries done to those parts of your body, it's not really minor at all. And that's the only thing that I think can hold him back. But for you, do you think that those injuries are going to limit him from what, obviously it's going to limit him from hitting his top potential, but is it limiting him from being that top 4 guy for sure that we thought he was going to be?
I think it's possible that could happen. I think that Olli definitely has the mentality to play through it and to get to where he needs to be. It's just whether or not that he's able to actually get there, and by this time next year, if he hasn't seen some decent minutes up in Vancouver, then I think we need to be maybe a little bit concerned about where his future ends up. Yeah. I think again, this is a situation where the left side, they've already got Edler, Hughes, and Ben under contract for next year. You've got Guillaume Brisebois is going to need a new deal. Ashton Sautner's going to need a new deal on the left side, and Ollie's right there, and possibly ready to step in, at least be the seventh D in Vancouver next year, and kind of learn on the job up there. That's going to be an interesting turnover on the back end next year in Utica. You've got guys like Jet Wu that could be coming in, possibly a Rathbone coming in. Maybe even a Tony Uutinen coming in. It's hard to say if he makes the trip across next year, but Jalen Chatfield's going to need a deal, Brisebois and Sautner, so there could be some turnover on the back end.
Yeah, absolutely. And you and me were testing about that today, and we were just saying, like, man, this team could be a lot of fun next year. The final question I have for you, Corey, and before I get to it, I just want to give a quick shout out. You and me are going to be on Utica Station tomorrow, Utica ESPN. Excited to do that with you. I know you've done it obviously a lot with those guys, but I'm excited for my first one.
Yeah, Rain and Scoop are awesome, and their producer Matt Page is a great guy as well, and they put on a good show there in Utica, and I like getting in on the pregame. Sometimes it can be a little bit of pressure bumping up into right up into the Comets game for me sometimes, but I really like talking Comets with those guys. They're a lot of fun. And tomorrow I think I might be on Rinkwide with Andrew and Dylan as well, right ahead of that hit. So it could be a busy little stretch for me right before the game tomorrow.
Well, you've had a busy week, Corey. You're on Sekeres and Price the other day. You're on with us every Friday, obviously. And yeah, no rest for the wicked.
Well, if guys like Rafferty and Bailey keep doing these things that they're doing, more people in Vancouver kind of want to hear about that stuff, I guess. So
yeah, you could hear it in Joe Roberts talking about it a lot. I noticed a lot lately in the conversations he's mentioning Vancouver.
Yeah, I love Joe, man. That guy is so awesome. He's about to be a dad like any time. So I'm really, really excited for him on that front. Yeah. He's super, super entertaining. And, he makes watching the Comets games a lot more fun than maybe they used to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so that was a long way of getting to my question. Zane McIntyre, after today, his save percentage drops under 900. He let up the 2 goals on the first 7 shots. Mikey DiPietro comes in and, looks pretty damn good. Lets up the 1 goal, which was a tough one. I think I texted you because if he would have dove across and made that paddle save, that would have been absolutely everywhere. As soon as that happened, I was getting ready to gift that. But, Mikey's playing really good hockey. Like, he's up to 907 save percentage himself. He's under 3 for goals against. It's been a 50-50 split so far. Do we get to a certain point this year where we see DiPietro get an actual run of games as a starter?
Yeah, I think that's probably not too far off. I I can't say for 100% certainty because I'm not there in the building, but from all indications that I've seen, the coaching staff has a lot of trust in Mikey DiPietro, and for good reason. He's really stepped up to the plate this year. He's risen to the challenge. When Zane McIntyre was called up, Mikey DiPietro was the number one goalie. They didn't go to their veteran Richard Bachman. They went with DiPietro and gave him his run of 3 or 4 games or whatever it was while McIntyre was up. And I do see Mikey, taking the reins in the second half here and taking the starter's role. It's going to be interesting on that side of things in Utica next year as well, because McIntyre, his deal is up after this year. Bachman's deal is up after this season, so they'll have DiPietro there. Jake Kiley he's a restricted free agent at the end of this season, so it'll be interesting to see if they bring him back. But I think Mikey DiPietro is certainly making a case to take the starter's job. And if they get into the playoffs and he falters, they've got a pretty decent guy there in McIntyre or even Bachman to take over if needed.
And just before we close out, Corey, I just wanted to get to one last question from the Twitters here. This is from Thomas Anderson, one of our Patreon supporters. He says, how has Gadjevic's game changed this year, and what does he have to do to get to the next progression of his development? And who do you think is going to take their game to the next level in the second half?
Okay, so with Gadjevich, I think the biggest difference in his game this year has just been confidence. He's when he was in last year, he struggled to get into the lineup because he wasn't really ready for the American Hockey League. His foot speed is part of that issue, but it was just bigger, stronger guys, and he had to adapt his game, to be able to impose his will on players the way he did in junior, and he's to his credit, he's been able to do that. This year, he's clicking along at I think just under half a point a game right now, which I think is for a guy that generally plays a third or a fourth line role with not the most skilled players offensively in the lineup. I think that says a lot for what he can bring to the table. That said, I think there's still a fair bit of work to do for him on his skating before I want to call him a guy that's going to knock on the door for an NHL job. I do think he could possibly get there, but I think it's going to take a little bit more work on his end with the skating. And as for who's going to step it up in the second half, that's going to be really interesting to see because there are so many names that, you could list off. Guys are playing well right now. Do we, if Cole Lind has a big second half, is that considered stepping up or just carrying over his first half, right? So if we're thinking of somebody that maybe we're not expecting, we haven't seen a lot of Francis Perron this year because of his eye injury. My understanding is he may not get 100% sight back in that eye, which is a little bit unfortunate, but it sounds like he's going to be back skating next week and, could be an option within a couple of weeks. And I think that's a guy that's going to be pretty hungry. His contract is up at the end of the year, and he's going to want to prove that he can still play.
Corey, have you seen Nikolai Goldobin's cut that he had, that he suffered in the game?
I saw the picture that somebody tagged Chris in earlier. That's a pretty good... I think he took a stick in the face. I think that I didn't really catch 100% of the play. I just saw him kind of spin around and go down, clutching his face behind the Comets net.
Yeah, we were watching the game. Yeah, we were watching the game, and we just, we didn't really see what happened. I think it was pretty far behind the play, but you could tell, the play was moving, and Goldie was still down that whole time.
Yeah, sometimes the officiating in the AHL leaves a little bit to be desired when you've got a guy, laying on the ice, picking his teeth up and leaking all over the place, and the play's still continuing down the ice. He took a puck or a stick or a elbow or a shoulder. He took something up high. I mean, the play probably should have been blown dead. There was another play where Ashton Sautner... he was injured, and there was no whistle blown on that play either. It happens a fair bit in the American League, unfortunately, and, kudos to these guys that have to try to play through that stuff and scrape themselves off the ice and get back to the bench while the play is continuing on.
Yeah, I'm just happy to see Goldie play a little bit of hard skill game that I like.
Yeah, he made one of those egregious errors again tonight, though, that
All right,
happens.
well, that's enough time, Corey.
It happens, though, man. It happens almost every game with him. I see him cough up a puck, and I think, okay, all the good stuff that he does, but that's the thing that Travis Green is going to say, nope, you're stapled to the bench.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, Corey. You're absolutely right. But yeah, where that actually ends our segment. It's not because you just dissed Goldie that we're closing up here. We've been doing it for about 20 minutes here. But yes, thanks a lot, Corey, and we'll talk to you next week.
Sounds good, guys. Have a good weekend.
You as well. And a huge thank you once again to Corey Hergott for joining us for Riding the Bus. Now, to close things out here, Chris and I are just going to quickly talk about what we've been working on. So the thing that I've been working on personally is a Louis Eriksson article. And, I talked about it during the episode. I'm working on an article called Why Canucks Fans Cheer So Loudly for Louis Eriksson. It's something I noticed when I was at the game, something you even notice when you're watching these broadcasts. These Canucks fans really cheer loudly for Louis Eriksson when he does minimal things like, I don't want to say the little things, but when he does the little things like score an empty net goal or hustle to beat out an icing or, shut down Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, which is a situation that I point to in the article, Louis Eriksson gets a lot of cheers from Canucks fans, and he'll never really go down as a fan favorite, I don't think, but I think he'll go down as one of those people. It's like, well, you have to know who Louis Eriksson is if you're a Canucks fan. In 10 years, everybody will still know who Louis Eriksson is for sure.
Yeah, Louis Eriksson is a vibe. It's too bad. You mentioned you're writing that for Boulis. You're leaving the Clown Army to go write an article somewhere?
Yeah, I had it on good intention that I should leave Clown Army, so no, I'm just kidding. I'm not leaving. I'm actually going to be ramping up the content quite a bit here. Like, I took a bit of a break after leaving Canuck Way. I kind of enjoyed my time off, and I think that because of that, it's been hard for me to kind of get into a groove with writing again. But before, I was writing every day for a whole year, so now I'm really enjoying not doing that.
Well, doing that and writing what you had to do with the Canuck Way was a lot of the smaller articles, and doing that for a year can weigh on you. But at the same time, you had also one of the busiest weeks that anyone's ever had on Canucks Twitter for a while there with, the Botchford Project, you coming to Canucks Army, and starting the podcast that you started at the time. That was a busy-ass week for you, man. It was one thing after another, and all my family was like, aren't you going to get tired? I'm like, yeah, maybe. I don't really know. I hope not. But yeah, it was definitely a busy week, so I think the break was well-deserved, but I was really excited to get going on this podcast and, get going at Pass It to Boulis and get going on Canucks Army and really get into it. I'm going to be able to start doing some post games and all that sort of stuff. And I'm really excited to be having that bigger role at Canucks Army and then, having the column at Pass It to Boulis and all that good stuff. But yeah, that's what I'm working on right now is a Louis Eriksson article. Do you find yourself getting into grooves? When I'm writing articles, if I'm writing a big article that I'm working on, I seem to always have a bunch of other ideas. So normally you see it, I guess, when I put out one of my big 2,500 word articles, there's always a snapshots the next day because my snapshots are my little 500 word articles that I do. I don't know if you do it too, but when I get into a groove, I just can't stop one day, and then I need 3 days of recovery almost. Yeah, I'm like that. I don't know how much I need for recovery because I feel once I start getting into that groove, I don't stop. Yeah. And the groove, I was on a groove for 6 months there where I had no problem coming up with content, and it was I was just going off. I don't know. It was something else right there. But yeah, it's a different process for everybody, I think. But for me, that's just, I guess I do pick up ideas and I go along with them. But that's my problem is once I have the idea, I write about the idea right then and there. I'll pause what I'm doing and start writing it, and I'll get 6 articles going at once. So stop breathing and just start writing.
exactly. So yeah, trying to finish 6 articles at once was not an easy thing to do, but it's something I frequently do. Yeah, no doubt. Well, I wrote 2 articles this week as well. If you want to check them out, I wrote about the defense core. The article title was the Canucks defense hasn't been this good in a long time. That's why I put out that strange poll question this week about if it was better than the 2011-2012 defense, because I think that was the only defense that actually stacked up over the past 5 years that might be better than the one that we had right now. So you can check that one on Canucks Army. And then I did a snapshots, which was so as I'm going through all these stats about the defense, this is where this one popped up, and I was like, holy shit, I got to write about this because the Canucks are 10-0-0 when they're outshot at home this year. So, they are winning so many games when just getting outshot by so much. Some games being outshot almost by 2-to-1 ratio. And I know when I think we were texting about this, when I found the stat, I had to text you about it. And you're just like, Jacob Markstrom. I think because that was just after your Markstrom article came out. And yeah, it was Jacob Markstrom. It was a high shooting percentage. But it's an interesting stat in the end. So I don't know if you guys want to read that, go for it. It's going to be on Canucks Army. But also,
I think I had a good week because I rounded up a couple of former Canucks to come on this show. Next week, we're going to use one of the interviews for this podcast form. It's going to be on episode 63 of the podcast. I don't know where we're going to fit it in, maybe in the middle, maybe at the end. We'll talk about that. But the other interview is going to be on our Patreon page. And since you're hosting Quads, maybe you can let everybody know where to find it.
Yeah, our Patreon page, patreon.com/Canucks Convo. Yeah, you can find us on there. We've got the 3 tiers. We got the $1 club, the $5 bonus content club, which gets you all the bonus content, which will include one of the interviews with one of these former Canucks. And if I were you, I would subscribe to our Patreon right away because this is something you don't want to miss. And like we said before, if you become a $10 hero tier Patreon subscriber in the month of January, you will receive a package from us that has a Canucks Convo t-shirt, some hockey cards, and if you're lucky, it'll have that Alex Burrows Ring of Honor night puck that we were talking about.
I do have an update on the shirts. The shirts have arrived. They arrived at about 4:30 today as we're recording. So the shirts are in. I'll be posting about that on social media. So yeah, we're going to have it as our pinned tweet on the Canucks Convo account. So go follow at Canucks Convo. The other day we had 1040 listeners. So
thank you all once again for listening. I'm David Quadrelli, and for Chris Faber, this is the Canucks Conversation.